submitting grades in summer 2020. I hope that everyone's keeping well and everyone's enjoying some sunshine as well. First thing I would like to do is just check that you can hear me. In your icon bar, you'll have a raise hand icon. If you can hear me, please can you click this so that I know that you can hear. Just give people a few minutes, well, a few seconds, and to do that, I'm just going to post in the chat about any problems with sound as well. So if you do have any problems with the sound at any point during the session, the first thing to do is to try logging out and logging back in, and quite often this will correct any problems that you do have. Okay, just having a look. Most people seem to have their hand raised. So that means I think everyone can hear. So I'm just going to lower all those hands. Just to let you know that the session is being recorded, and I will make a recording available a few days after the session as well. Okay, so the session today is an overview of the proposed Pearson approach after the announcement on 9th of April from Ofqual and DFE on how grades can be calculated this summer for vocational and technical qualifications. I'm afraid there won't be time for questions during the main part of the session, but I'm happy to go through and answer any queries that you have at the end, and you can submit those questions through using the chat on here, or if you want to raise your hand at that point and ask the question over the mic, I'm also happy to do that as well. If we don't have time to answer any of your queries during the session, and you still want to ask any questions, you can submit questions through the customer portal, and there's a link at the end of the slides for this, or using the Pearson Music community pages, and again there's a slide, a link to that page, so please do join that group as well. Finally, as I said, there is a chat function available, and you can use this to communicate with the group or myself as well. So the agenda is to give a brief overview of the situation, look at the proposed approach from Pearson, the process for centre assessment grades for internally assessed components, and evidence you may consider, calculated grades for externally assessed components, rank ordering, and then a summary of the processes as well. So to give just a quick overview of where things are at the moment, the announcement to shut schools and to cancel summer exams was made on 20th of March by the Secretary of State, and that there would be a calculated grade for learners. It was also stated that further details would follow. As I'm sure you can appreciate, it is an unprecedented situation, but also the situation for vocational qualifications is complex due to the different approaches by the many awarding organisations that offer these qualifications. We have published our proposed approach to awarding grades this summer, which is still awaiting final confirmation, and this will be due after Ofqual released the outcomes from their consultation that they held. So on the 9th of April, further information was given about how the grades will be awarded. For vocational qualifications that are used for progression, a learner will receive a calculated result similar to that for GCSE and A-level candidates. The extraordinary regulatory framework will apply to components that were due to be completed between the 20th of March and the 31st of July. So to look at the proposed Pearson approach, proposed approach from Pearson is for centres to submit centre assessment grades for internally assessed components that were due to be completed between the 20th of March and the 31st of July. Provide a calculated grade for externally assessed components that were due to be taken this summer, and for centres to provide an overall rank order for all learners on a BTEC programme, but not include an overall grade. Someone's just asked when will Ofqual confirm the proposals. Ofqual are due to release and make an announcement about the consultation in the next few days, I believe. So as soon as that's done, we'll be able to confirm the approach that we are taking, although we have worked closely with Ofqual during putting together this proposal as well. So the main things left to clear up from the consultation will be things like appeals. Okay. So to look at this in a little more detail, we have asked you to submit any completed component grades via edX Online as soon as possible and no later than the 5th of June. We are also asking that for incomplete internally assessed components that were due to be completed, and that includes resubmission, between the 20th of March and the 31st of July, you submit centre assessment grades also by the 5th of June. The centre assessment grade is the most likely grade a learner would have achieved if they had completed the assessments for the component. The grade submitted should be claimed as an interim claim rather than a full award. We'd also ask that any centre assessment grades are not shared with learners, parents or carers, or anyone outside of the centre until after results have been issued. Someone's just asked, is it interim for year 11 and year 10? Yeah, so any component grades that you do enter on edX Online are interim claims at the moment. We'll be issuing further guidance on the sort of claiming of grades in the next few days. For externally assessed components that were due to be taken this summer, we will not be asking for grades to be submitted. We will be issuing a calculated grade for all completing learners. For non-completing learners, we will also make sure that they can receive a calculated grade if they had an entry made and that they meet a minimum evidence threshold of 25% of the internal assessment for the qualification, and it include at least one mandatory component. If this isn't met, we will defer that calculation. Someone's just asked, if students fully completed all units, including external, can we claim full award as they are not predictions? At the moment, we would still ask that these are made as interim claims as well. So we're also asking centres to submit a rank order at qualification level. This won't include an overall qualification grade, and you'll need to submit a single rank order for all learners registered on each BTEC programme. So this must be submitted between the 1st of June and the 19th of June. So the rank order would include all learners registered on the programme. That would be completing learners and non-completing learners. I'll go through that in more detail later on. So the rank order would be at qualification level. And again, I'll just go through that in more detail later. We're also going to carry out some checks and statistical standardization of the centre assessment grades, and this would include things like historical data at centre and overall level. So to look more detail at the internally assessed components, internally assessed components that are eligible for a centre assessment grade must have been planned to be completed by the 31st of July. They may have been started before the 20th of March or have been planned to begin after the 20th of March. Components that are due to be completed in the next academic year are not eligible for a centre assessment grade. We are obviously aware that these components would have been impacted as well, and we are looking at ways to support centres with the delivery of these and the assessment of these. There are things that we know that we can put in place already, which would be our normal special consideration processes, but we're also looking at other ways that we can support centres that may be in the middle of assessing components and unable to complete these. Okay, so for any components that were completed before the 20th of March, you will submit the grade achieved for that component. For any incomplete components or components not yet started, due for completion before the 31st of July, you provide a centre assessment grade. Again, this is the most likely grade the learner would have achieved if they had completed all assessments, including resubmission for the component this summer. And go on to look at the evidence that you might consider for incomplete units. So that can be any part of a component that has already been assessed, and other relevant data and evidence that you may hold. And this may include previous relevant exams or external assessment results, results from mock assessments, non-assessed learning activities, such as things that they've done in class, enrichment and related programs, your professional judgment, and also comparing to previous cohorts. I'm aware that there's some questions coming in. I'll try and go back at the end and go through all of these as well. Okay. And the evidence you may consider for components that were not yet started but due to be completed by the end of July, that's where you consider the other relevant evidence that we've already just gone through there that you may consider. So that can include classwork that's not assessed, mock assessments that you've held for internal assessments, and your professional judgment on that as well. So the process for providing centre assessment grades is you need to refer to your assessment plan to identify the learners and the components that are eligible to receive a centre assessment grade. You then need to enter any completed component grades on edX and online, compile your centre assessment grades for the incomplete or not yet started components. This would then be passed to the head of department, who'll then review and endorse the centre assessment grades. We'll then pass this to the head of centre to verify. And then you need to submit the centre assessment grades by the 5th of June. you must not share the centre assessment grades with students, parents or carers, or any individuals outside of the centre before the results have been issued. Just to go back and look at some of these questions coming in at this point. People are asking a little bit about historical data. So where the course is established, obviously that can include historical data for the course. If it's a new course within centre, and actually obviously this is the first year of assessment and completed learners for the Tech Award in Music Practice, that may not be obviously possible, and we will be looking at other data that we hold around centre level and overall qualification level that we can apply to that. So just having a look through, there's a question around component 2 and the completion of that, where that would learning aid B would be completed in year 11. As I said, we are looking at ways to support centres there, and there's options around adjusting assessment plans to change the teaching, learning and assessment of that component. As I said, there's the special consideration option if there's been particular impact on that, and we are looking at other options to support centres as well there. Someone's asked about partial components that would have been started and finished within the time frame. That is where you can apply a centre assessment grade to those components. So yeah, a few people asking about components that are due to be completed in the next academic year, and the historical data. And in terms, someone's asked about regards of evidence, do we mark what we already have or leave it? Obviously, you can use any evidence that you have to inform the centre assessment grade that you are awarding a learner for a particular component. So you may not mark it in the same way in terms of giving the feedback that you would, but you are obviously looking at it in terms of how they have performed on that assessment and how that could feed in to the centre assessment grade that you award there. So the process for centre assessment grades is proposed to apply to all learners, so year 10 and 11. So it's for any components that were due to be completed within that window of the 20th of March to the 31st of July. If you can't access this work as you're shielding, obviously hopefully you'll be able to access the data around any work, or have someone be able to access that for you, or as we said, there is the option for other evidence to be used around this as well to inform the centre assessment grade. It isn't just around completed work that is held in the centre, but also if you are in a position where you don't feel that you can award a centre assessment grade, it may be necessary to adjust the assessment plan and assess that component at another time as well. We are going to understand that the assessment plan is a working document and is going to have been impacted by the current situation as well, but we would ask you to keep a version control of any changes to the assessment plan as well. We're not asking for any evidence to be submitted for the centre assessment grades, but we may carry out some checks for our quality assurance processes with respect to that. And someone has asked, I was asked by SLT if teacher assessment grades for year 10 would still count towards potential school performance tables next year when they complete the course. Ofqual and DFE haven't said that the performance tables next year have been suspended. So any results that those learners that are currently in year 10 receive at present would count towards performance measures as it stands. And someone said, if my year 10s are supposed to have started component 2 learning aim A and to have completed it by June, would that be CAG as well? If it is only for completed full components rather than learning aims, so unless they are completing the whole of component 2 within the time frame, it wouldn't be allowed to have a centre assessment grade. If someone's asked about centre assessment grades, are we submitting these in addition to completed internal units for year 11? If they have completed the 2 internal units, you would be submitting the grades that they have for those components. You wouldn't need to submit the centre assessment grades, although the centre assessment grades and completed components are all being entered in edX Online, so it is the same process. Will these units be sampled next year? We've confirmed that centre assessment grade components will not be made part of the SB process next year, and it's only work that's completed after the 31st centre assessment grade window that would be SB next year. Obviously, people are concerned with running out of time if units are sort of delayed and deferred. And as I said, that's something that we are looking at, how we support centres with that process. And there's, as I said, special consideration option if that has been impacted as well. Going to move on to the rank order in a little bit, so I'll come back to that question. And yeah, just someone saying about deferring component 2 will impact on the prep for component 3. As I said, that's something that we will have to look into. And if the student has completed component 1 in year 10, will they be given an external grade? That's something I'll come on to in 1 second as well. So I'm just going to move on so we get through all the material in the time and come back to any more questions as we move on to the calculated grades for externally assessed components as well. So for external assessment, completing learners will receive a calculated grade for any external assessments they were entered for this summer. Non-completing learners can receive a calculated grade if they had an registration for the assessment this summer and they have completed at least 25% of the internal assessment, which should include a mandatory component, as all components are mandatory on the Tech Award. That is just one of the components. So if this minimum requirement isn't met, then we will offer to defer the calculated grade until sufficient internal assessment has been completed. So to look at the minimum requirements for the Tech Award in music practice, as I said, it is just one internally assessed component to be completed. And when we say completed, that can include the centre assessment grade. So there's just a few questions coming in around this as well. Just clarity, if component 2 learning aim A is complete but learning aim B is not yet, do we still provide a centre assessment grade for learning aim A? No, that would fall outside of the regulatory framework because the whole unit component isn't complete by the 31st of July. So it is for whole components that this applies to. If a student has completed component 1 in year 10, will they be given an external grade? So if they had a registration for this summer and they have completed component 1, they can receive the calculated grade for the external assessment this summer. Will the part and incomplete units be SV'd? We have started the SV process. So if a unit is incomplete and is being completed after in the next academic year, so after the window, then that could form part of the SV process, as that unit would have been completed after the centre assessment grades. So if you complete one learning aim, that would be 50% of the component. So you need to complete whole components that would count as being complete in order to calculate the external assessment. So to receive a calculated grade for component 3, students must have completed at least one internally assessed component. Yes, that's correct. So it must have a complete internally assessed component to receive a calculated grade for component 3. So that can be a calculated grade or the unit being complete as well. So there's just more consideration about components that are falling outside of this window. So someone asking what considerations there will be for the missing time. As I said, there are processes in place around special consideration, but we're also looking at other support that we can offer. Someone asking about guidance on split units being available soon. Hope to have that available as soon as possible. I've got a meeting in the next week or so with colleagues around this as well to discuss how we can support and what process we can put in place there. What do we do if we have limited practical evidence to support centre assessment grade for component 2? We use professional judgment and consider the level of instrumental skill of the students. So it isn't just around the practical evidence. There are the other considerations and other evidence that you can use to come up with a centre assessment grade as well. And it's quite broad. It can be on mock assessments that you've run, it can be your professional judgment, and it can be your knowledge of the student on other programs or related programs and enrichment activities that they do as well. And someone's asked if students were due to resub component 2, before the 31st July, would we still need to submit a calculated grade? So yes, if a resubmission falls within the window of 20th of March and 31st of July, that would be considered when it's being completed. So that would fall into the calculated, the centre assessment grade window. So to look at rank order, you'll need to provide a rank order at qualification level for your entire cohort on each programme, including those not completing this year. So for example, first year learners on a 2-year programme. In the case of the Tech Award, obviously that is one programme, there's no different sizes to that. So all your learners that are registered on the programme would come into the same rank order. Your rank order should number all learners for each BTEC programme code from 1 highest achieving downwards, and in that rank order you're not allowed any tied rank orders. Also, just as a note, again, not to share the details of the rank order with any learners, parents or carers, or anyone outside of the centre. So again, a couple of questions around this. Do we submit separate rank for each year group? No, it is the one rank order for all learners registered on the programme. If we are not submitting calculated grades for learners in the first year of the course, do we still have to include them in the rank order? Yes, each learner who's registered on the programme would need to be included in that rank order. If we are ranking those, finishing the course alongside those in year below, for only component 1, how can this be done accurately? I'll come on to that in a minute. So is the rank order with a grade or pupil 1 to 15 in order? So it's at qualification level, not, and you won't be submitting any grades. So it is just a numerical rank order, 1 down to X, depending on how many students you have. Someone's asked about why year 10 are included in the same rank order. It is to do with statistical and quality assurance processes that our statistical teams that will be doing a lot of the calculations require this data as well. Someone said my year 10s were due to complete component 1 within the window. Do I just do to centre assessment grade and nothing else? So they would need a centre assessment grade, and you would need to include them in the rank order as well. And someone has asked, can this rank order change in the future? So for learners that are on a first year of a programme, the rank order that you submit will not be carried over to when they complete. It's to inform the statistical processes this year, so it won't impact on the grades that they achieve at the end of the course when you actually will claim the full certification for them. When you are creating your rank order, you may want to consider a few things. So initially, component grades. You may want to consider the overall qualification point score. You may want to look at the component achievement at criteria level. So, for example, a component that's achieved a merit using maybe merit distinction across the criteria is less strong in comparison to a learner that's achieved merit distinction. You might want to look at how strongly learners usually achieve the command verbs at criterion level, but also the quality and consistency of their assessment evidence as well. You could use teacher knowledge of related activities, and you should also probably have cross-team assessment meetings for everyone that assesses and teaches on the course to refine and confirm that rank order as well. Someone's just said year 11's a first award, a year 10 a tech award. Do I complete separate rank orders? So they would be separate rank orders as they are on different component, different program codes. Of 2 classes taught by 2 different teachers, not completed the unit and have therefore not completed any standardization. Do you have any advice on how to make this fair? In terms of that situation, that's where cross-team meetings and discussions between the 2 teachers would be very useful, and discuss those rank orders and decide on those. If I only have year 10 cohort and no year 11 classes, do I need to provide a rank order? Yes, we're asking a rank order because it is impacting on quality assurance processes for internally centre assessment grades as well. How will students in the first year of the course who haven't completed anything be used to inform statistics? In terms of that, if they haven't completed anything but you are submitting a centre assessment grade, we do require that information. Someone said about year 9 group in the first year of the course but have not submitted any work yet. I did get confirmation that for the case of year 9 when no work or assessment has really taken place, you can include them in the list of learners, but you may not necessarily need to include them in the rank order. There was worries that this would throw up an error in the system, but I think in the case of the year 9s that haven't completed any assessment towards that, you'll be able to not include them in that rank order numbering, although they would appear in the list. Have only year 11s, no year 10s will this affect rank order? No, so you just submit the rank order for the learners that are registered on the program. Year 10 students in the first year, of course, haven't completed anything yet. We're not submitting a centre assessment grade. We do still include them in the rank order. The information that I've been given around that is for year 10 learners, yes, you would still include them in the rank order, even if they're not submitting any centre assessment grades or completed work at this point. Whereas that's slightly different for centres running a 3-year Key Stage 4 with year 9 learners. Year 9 group who are working on component 1 currently, can they be added to the centre assessed work? So that would depend on when you plan to complete that component with them. If it is before the 31st of July, they can receive the centre assessment grade for that. Twilight class on the same timescale as my year 10, of course 2021, I'm assuming they are including the rank order. Yes, it sounds like they would be included in the rank order there. Okay, how do we enter this data and when will it be ready to input? I'll be moving on to all of that in a second as well. So when you're considering the non-completing learners alongside the learners that are completing, you may want to consider a few things as well. This could include learners' relevant past achievements. So if they've completed any courses that you're aware of that are relevant to the program, you may want to consider the trajectory of the learner's performance so far on the program and where they may achieve at the end of the course. You could compare your Year 2 learner achievement at the corresponding stage of the programme with your current year, first year learners as well. But you could also, obviously doesn't particularly apply to the Tech Award here, but reflect on previous cohorts' achievement at this point and their final outcome as well. So the process for submitting the rank order and coming up with the rank order is to identify the learners on each program code. So this would be all your learners that you have registered on the Tech Award in Music Practice. Work with colleagues delivering the course to rank order all of these learners. You'll then pass that rank order to the head of department, who will then review and verify the rank order, who will then pass this to the head of centre again, who will review and verify this. The rank order then needs to be submitted in a window between the 1st of June and the 19th of June. We're currently developing that system and it will be ready for the rank orders to be submitted between that date, and we are developing the further guidance of how to do all this as well. And just as a note again, to not share the rank order with learners, parents or carers or anyone outside the centre. So if my Year 9 learners were due to complete component 1 in July, can we enter assessment grade for this year group? So yes, so if they were due to complete a component between the 20th of March and the 31st of July, you can apply the centre assessment grade for those learners. So to summarise the processes and go through this again, so that internally assessed components, you will identify the components and learners eligible for a centre assessment grade, provide grades to us via edX and online for completed internally assessed components, then prepare the centre assessment grades for the incomplete internally assessed components. Then the third step is for the head of department to review and approve the centre assessment grades and to pass this to the head of centre, who will verify this, and then to submit these by the 5th of June. The rank order, the process is to again identify the learners on each programme. You work with colleagues to prepare the rank order for your entire cohort on each programme, and that includes the first year learners on a 2-year programme as well. You would then have this reviewed and approved by the head of department, and then the head of centre will verify the rank order. You'll then submit the rank order in the window between the 1st of June and the 19th of June. Someone's just asked to clarify, would Year 9 be included in the rank order? So if they have completed work and are receiving a centre assessment grade as well, you would need to include them in the rank order. If they haven't completed any assessment towards a component at all, then they would be listed in the rank order, but the system should allow them to not be included in the numbering of that rank order. And then someone's asked, will we need to provide sample materials for moderation if students are completing this year? So the normal standards verification process will not happen this year. We are not asking for evidence to be submitted around centre assessment grades, but we could carry out checks with some centres on this as well. Will SV happen next year for current year 10? The proposal and the intention is to have the normal SV process back in place next year. Here are some links to the support portal or the community pages to submit any questions, although it may not be possible to provide all the answers at the moment until we have the final outcomes from the off-core consultation. The slides from this session are available in the download section in the materials section of the presentation here. I hope you found this session useful as well. I'll go through a few questions now that are coming in. Will completed units be SV for completing learners this year, or is there no SV process at all? So the SV process this year will not happen, and we aren't asking for specific evidence to be submitted towards any unit component grades that are being submitted there. Will this SV process for year 10 next year include the centre assessment grade component 1? So the SV process next year will only be looking at work that is post-centre assessment grade. So the components that are receive a centre assessment grade won't be included in the SV process next year. That's in the FAQs on the guidance around centre assessment grades. That's detailed in there. Is there a minimum requirement on the quantity of work needed for an incomplete component 1? We're not asking for quantity of work to be completed, and the evidence that you consider is quite broad. So if it does fall within the window of 20th of March and 31st of July, then it can be possible to provide a centre assessment grade for that component. For year 11, will the centre assessment grade be required along with the internally assessed completed units? If they have completed all internally assessed components, then you would be submitting the grades for those components there. If they have completed one component and the other component is a centre assessment grade, you would submit both of those. But both completed units and the centre assessment grade are being submitted in edX Online in the same way, so we wouldn't particularly at this point tell between the two. It was hoped that we would be able to have separate systems for these, but that hasn't been possible within the time frames. Submit claims for incomplete work for year 10 students. Will we be required to complete them when we are back in school? So if you are submitting centre assessment grades for a component for year 10, there's no requirement to complete that component again once schools return. Someone's asked about get a certificate for attending this training. I term this a support session, and in terms of what it provides, there isn't a certificate for attending this, I'm afraid. The rank order is only submitted to Pearson by the centre, with subject teachers are not being asked to send a specific ranking. Have I got that correct? As a teacher, you will be involved in providing the rank order for the learners on the programme, and that is then verified, should be verified by your head of department and your head of centre before being sent off to us. So centre assessment grade is in lieu of completed unit grade. Yeah, so if learners have completed components, there would be no other info to input apart from the rank order. Yes, that's correct. So you would input the completed component grades and provide the rank order. You wouldn't have to submit centre assessment grades alongside completed components as well. As has been asked before, if Year 10 had started Component 2 Learning Aim A and was due to finish it by 31st July, not due to finish Learning Aim B, do we need to submit the predicted grades for the whole component? No, that would fall outside of the window of the regulatory framework from Ofqual, so we're not asking for centre assessment grades for those components that fall outside the window. As I said, we are working on ways to support centres for the delivery and assessment of those. Will the rank order submission be a form on OSCAR? I don't think it will be on the OSCAR system. I think it will be more likely to be in edX online somewhere, although I don't have full details as yet around where that will appear as a system. I hope that has answered all of your questions. How will this information be shared with centres when it's up and running? We have been sending out a lot of communication to centres. That's been going to exams officers and quality nominees. So they should be aware of the proposed process and the systems that we are putting in place, and any updates that come through as well. So exams officers and quality nominees will get this information, and as soon as I have things as well, I'll be able to post things on the music community pages as well. Can I just confirm there's no SV for any completed units this year? So no, the normal SV process this year will not be happening. Do you expect there to be significant support changes to deal with squeezing component 2 into next academic year, as in fairness, special consideration isn't usually worth much? So in terms of that, we are looking at what we can do in terms of support. I'm afraid I don't have much information other than sort of around the special consideration route at the moment, but we are looking at other ways that we can support centres in the delivery of components that have been impacted, that are falling outside of the window as well. Is this the same process for other BTEC subjects like health and social care? Most BTECs will follow the same process. There are some that will fall outside of this. It depends if they include things like a license to practice that health and social care may have. So that may have a different process in place, but some of the principles are going to be similar. Will this be how other BTEC Tech Award grades will be calculated, or this just music? So this process is applying to the majority of BTEC Tech Awards, as I said, and there may be some differences depending on sector and the requirements of that specific sector, but they are all following a similar process in this way. In the ranking, I would have a year 9 completing component 1 and a year 10 completing components 1 and 2. Who would I rank? 2 groups with half as much work as each other. That is where you will need to consider the trajectory of the learners and how they may achieve at the end of the course. and as I said, comparing where they are with achievement at that point. So with your year 10 learners, how they may have achieved, how they've achieved on component 1, and how they've progressed on component 2 as well, and where they may achieve at the end of that course, and also how those year 9 learners could progress in that as well. So that is a professional judgment that you would make on that as well. But we do understand that that's a difficult decision to make, but also that the rank order isn't binding on those learners in terms of when they do come to complete. Component 1 and 2 are due to be completed by 31st July this year. Do you just rank or also put in estimated centre assessment grades as well? So you need to input the centre assessment grades and a rank order as well. If year 9 had some assessment this year, do teachers get a choice whether or not to include them in the ranking? Is it something that must be done? So if there is assessment that's been done for year 9 and you feel that you are confident enough to include them in that rank order, then you should do, and especially they need to be included if they are receiving a centre assessment grade as well. Do we rank for each component or overall? So the rank order is at qualification level, so it's an overall level for the qualification. So we don't require rank order within components. And is there an overall grade calculator available for Tech Award? Yes, there is. If you just bear with me 1 minute, I can post a link to that in the chat here. Just have to bear with me 1 minute. So there we go. There's a link there that will take you to the grade calculators that are available online, and that includes a Tech Award calculator on there. Someone said my year 9s were due to do a 2-year course finishing next year. School has now changed this, so they finish in year 11. So they did not start their component 1 yet. Can we restart in September with them? If they haven't done any assessment towards that, then that's absolutely fine. You can just restart with them. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to finish now because a colleague of mine also is using this platform and needs to start their session at 2 o'clock. So I'm going to have to finish now, but if you do have any further questions, please do submit them via the contact portal or on the music community pages.